Okay, seventh grade. So our learning target for today is I can compare two or more integers. I can model an integer on a number line. I can find the absolute value, and I can find opposite. So we kind of have a lot going on today, but they're all under the category of integers. So we're going to talk about what an integer is to start. So you should be on page 1 in your notebooks. All right, guys. So first of all, let's talk about defining the word integers. So when you hear the word integer, what's really happening then is an integer includes the positive whole numbers. And it also includes the negative whole numbers. So we're talking about values like, so let's write out some values here, like values like -2, -1, but it also includes 0, +1, +2, into infinity in both directions. So those are some examples of integers. So positive, negative, whole values. So then what we're going to talk about also today, and part of our learning target is the word inequality. Inequality means unequal, or many kids will think of it as not equal. So inequality is a math expression stating that one quantity is more than or less than another. Why don't you go ahead and take some time and copy those notes. So we're talking about things that are unequal or not exactly equal. In math, we're often used to doing just equal things, but an inequality means it is not exactly equal. So we're going to use these signs to represent that. We're going to use this first sign here, which we're going to go ahead and call greater than. Hopefully you've seen that alligator mouth problem before. And then the other sign here, we're going to go ahead and call less than. So you might have seen that alligator mouth problem as well before. Sometimes when I help students try to sort between those two, you can think of the less than sign. It almost makes that L, that little bit of an L or a less than sign. So by default, the other one has to be greater than, but that helps a lot of kids thinking about the L is a less than sign. Okay, guys, so let's keep working through this now. So as we work through our learning targets here, the next thing is that I can compare integers. Well, we've already talked what an integer is. An integer is -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, going to infinity in both directions. So we're going to talk about that the further to the right, the greater the number, thinking about a bank account. So we're going to say worst situation over here on the left, all the way to the best situation here on the right. So we have this blank number line here, and we have to graph the whole number 7 and the whole number 5. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw 0 here on the number line. And then I'm going to put some numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, looks like I'm not going to fit it there, but 5, 6. And we'll just add a number value there, 7. Those are all positive numbers, thinking about as we move further to the right, the better the bank account. This is money that I have in my bank. Better to the right. So we're going to go ahead and indicate that the whole number 7 would be here, and the whole number 5 would there, just to give us an idea of where those integers fall on the number line. So in our next example, what we're going to do is we're going to take, how about two negative numbers? Negative numbers, thinking about a negative bank situation where you have to owe or pay somebody money. So we have this negative value. Positive values over here, money in the bank. Negative values over there. So I'm going to actually start with this -9 because that's my biggest value. Then I'm going to keep working towards 0. So the worst bank account to the best bank account. And I'm just going to kind of keep going there until I get to a positive value. Well, I might as well just write them all in. Go ahead and catch up there. If you have not been able to catch up on those, go ahead and do that right now. Again, if we're going too fast, always pause the video, catch up. If you have a sub today and you need to stop, feel free to do that. All right, 7th grade. So we're going to talk about -9 first. -9 really means that you have to pay $9, you owe $9. So we're going to go ahead and graph -9 there on the number line. And then we're going to do the same thing with the value of -3. So we're going to go ahead and dump -3 on the number line. So as we're graphing then, or comparing, we're going to talk about what's the difference between having $5 in the bank and having 3. Which is better? Who wins that? So we've, since elementary school, talked about the alligator's mouth, or the alligator likes the biggest or eats the biggest amount. So we're going to go ahead and say alligator's going to eat the 5 there. We're going to call that greater than. As I move to the right there, that middle problem, this is a situation where I have to pay somebody $5 comparing to pay somebody $3. If we just use common sense there and ask, Which is better, paying somebody $5 or paying somebody $3? Alligator's mouth would suggest definitely paying somebody $3 is a better situation. So alligator's going to eat the better situation. So it should be a less than sign. And you can kind of see that L shape there to make that less than sign. All right, so the next example there, we have a -8, which means I pay 8 compared to $8 in the bank. That's pretty obvious which is better. Paying somebody $8 or $8 in the bank, you should be saying a less than symbol there, again, making that L shape graph. As we continue to read then, we have the absolute value. Well, the absolute value is really the distance from 0 on a number line. So the absolute value is our next definition here. You should be saying the distance from 0 on a number line. So we're going to talk about absolute value here and look at a real example. So what we're asking about is the number 3 versus the number -3, and here's 0. Here's our 0 on the number line, which is a neutral number, neither positive nor negative. It's not a great thing for your bank account. It's not a horrible thing for your bank account. It's just 0. We're asking for a definition. The absolute value is the distance from 0 on a number line. So if we're asking about how far is -3 for a number line, we would say it's 1, 2, 3 units. So -3 is 3 units from the number line, or from 0. Doing the same thing with the +3, where it's 1, 2, 3 units. So we'd say that the absolute value of each of those is just +3 because they are the same distance from 0 on a number line. I like to teach my students about that. The key through absolute value really is that it's always positive because it's a distance that's being measured. So I like to tell my students about that this really I like to think of it as jail. This is a jail situation. And whenever you're in jail and you get out of jail, which I hope that never happens to you, but you get out of jail, it's a good thing for you. It's always a positive thing when you get out of jail. Keep it in mind, it might not be the best thing for everybody that you get out of jail, rest of the community, but for you personally, it's a good thing or a positive experience that you get out of jail. So we're going to think of these as, this is the distance from 0 on a number line. It is how many units. It has to be positive, but it's helpful for my students to always think of that. There's jail. -6 is jail, in jail. -6 gets out of jail, which becomes a +6. Now, same situation here. 12 is in jail. 12 gets out of jail. That's still a +12. Notice I didn't write -12. It has to stay positive. It's just a +12. Different scenario over here, which is one of my favorite scenarios to talk about, is that what happens if we have negative friends waiting outside of jail? Well, first of all, -5 gets out of jail. -5 says, sweet, I'm out of jail. Positive, right? How far from 0? It's 5 units from 0. But negative friends waiting outside. So -5 gets out of jail. Great news for -5. +5. But then his negative friends reattach to his life back to negative lifestyle. He or she. All right, guys. So that's absolute value. So we're kind of getting a lot of definitions in here. You'll have plenty of time to practice those as we work through this stuff. Just trying to cover all the terminology right now. The other word that you've heard before for sure is called the word opposite. So what is an opposite? An opposite really are numbers that are the same distance from 0 but opposite directions. So many kids think of that as, well, that's just absolute value. We just talked about that. But the key is that absolute value always has to be positive. But opposite does not have to be positive. It's the opposite sign. So if we have 0, go ahead and mark 0 on your number line. We'll do a couple examples, maybe 2. And if we mark this as +2, the opposite of +2 is actually -2. They're opposites because they're the same distance from 0. We're up here in our work up here in absolute value. We said that in absolute value, we cannot have a negative answer unless negative friends are waiting outside. It always has to be positive when you're talking about a distance. We'll do one more example here. So here's 3. The absolute value of, or pardon me, the opposite of 3 is -3. So they're opposites. You've done a ton of work on opposites before. All right, guys, so meet me on the next page. So now we're on page 2. So we're going to really break it down. What are positive integers? What are negative integers? Meet me on page 2. I want you for the rest of this unit to think about that in the real world. What we'd say is that positive integers are really like money in the bank. So like a good thing, money in the bank. And then I want you to think about that negative integers are money in the red, or money that you have to pay or owe. So that's what we're going to do for this next section. So in this next section, first of all, I would like you to just simply write a dollar sign if it's a positive integer, and then write the word pay if it's a negative integer, just kind of thinking about what those values mean. Just a note, as you can see in my work here, that 3 of these are not integers. I did it on purpose so that you could see that not all of these are integers. So let's see if you are able to find out which ones are not integers. So as we start going through, we're going to take a look at the sign. A -9 means I have to pay $9. So you should have -9 in that box. You just simply write the word pay. Moving on to the next row. 15. 15 is a positive 15, so that means money in the bank. The next problem is 0. 0 is tricky because it's not positive, it's not negative, so we would say neither. It's still an integer, however, it's not one of the 3 that are not integers, it's just neither. Next problem then, we have a -1. -1 means that we're going to pay $1. Then we have positive 12. For positive 12, we're going to say that we have $12 in the bank. I'd like you to try to work through the next 3 rows. I'll give you some time. Go. Working through the next 3 rows, you're just writing money in the bank, pay, neither, and try to identify the ones that are not integers. So you should be on page 2. You're working on the next 3 rows. Circle the 3 that are not integers if you are able to find them. A little challenge for you. Okay, checking your work here. Hopefully you've had some time. If not, go ahead and pause the video and catch up. If you have a sub and it's going too fast, go ahead and let the sub know. So you should have said money in the bank. You should have said pay, and you should have circled this one because this one is actually not an integer. It is a decimal value. It's not a positive or negative whole value. Moving on, we should say pay, $25. Next one is positive 6. It's money in the bank. This one here, we're going to say negative, which is a pay $17. Next row, starting with -100, you should have said pay. We're going to pay $100. As we keep moving on, then, we should say $16 in the bank. Then it's $14 in the bank. We are going to pay $56. We're going to pay $19. Next problem here is 45 cents. It's money in the bank. It's positive. It is not an integer. However, it's not a whole value. Then we're going to pay $14. Money in the bank. We're going to pay $2. And we have 30 cents. This is like 30 cents in the bank. It's not an integer. So those are the 3 you should have circled as not integers. So for our summary, what I would say is this. Think about that if the integer is positive, it is money in the bank. If the integer is negative, you think of it as money that you owe or you have to pay. Go ahead and fill out those summaries. Give you some time to write there. So our work today is on integers. We talked about opposites, absolute values, those jail bar questions, some alligator mouth questions. So there's a ton of stuff going on in this work today. So for homework then, I would like you to do all of page 3. So you should be working on page 3, page 4, and let's take a look at page 5 to make sure. Yep, and page 5. So you need to get through page 3, page 4, page 5. On the bottom of page 5, you can see that I'm giving you 2 challenge questions. They are optional, but I'd like you to consider trying those. If you like to try those 2 and skip 2 of the easier questions, that's fine with me. Okay, 7th grade. So your homework tonight is page 3, 4, and 5. Have a fabulous night.